Amid a rainy night, a poor girl bursts into a hospital desperately pleading for help to save a baby. But when a rich and lonely man witnesses the scene, something inside him awakens in an inexplicable way. In that moment, a simple plea transforms not just one fate, but 3 lives forever intertwined by love. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The storm had unleashed its fury over Boston with unexpected vengeance. Rain pounded the city streets, turning them into rushing rivers as lightning split the dark October sky. Through this tempest, a girl no older than 15 ran desperately, clutching a small bundle against her chest, trying to shield it from the deluge. "Please, hold on," she whispered to the bundle. "Just a little longer." Beneath the thin, soaked blanket was a baby, his tiny face flushed with fever, his breathing shallow and labored. The girl, trembling from cold and exhaustion, had been running for what felt like hours. Her name was Emma Harper, and tonight she was fighting against time itself. Beacon Hill Medical Center stood like a fortress against the storm, its emergency entrance illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights. Emma burst through the sliding doors, her clothes dripping puddles onto the polished floor. "Please," she gasped, approaching the reception desk. "This baby needs help. He's burning up and barely breathing." The receptionist looked up, her expression hardening as she took in Emma's appearance. Soaked clothes, tangled hair, dirty face. "Are you the mother? Do you have insurance or any identification?" "No, but without insurance or parental authorization, we can't." "He could die." Emma's voice cracked. "Please, just look at him." "I'm sorry, but there are protocols. You'll need to go to the county hospital on Meredith Street. They handle charity cases." Emma felt her legs weakening. The county hospital was miles away, and Tommy, that's what she called the baby, might not survive the journey. People in the waiting area glanced at her, then looked away uncomfortably. "He's just a baby," Emma pleaded, tears mixing with rainwater on her cheeks. "Please." The security guard began approaching her when the main entrance doors swept open. A tall man in an expensive suit entered, shaking rain from his umbrella. Several staff members straightened instantly. "Mr. Blackwood," the receptionist said, her tone completely transformed. "We weren't expecting you this evening." James Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises and the hospital's most generous donor, had come to discuss the new pediatric wing that would bear his family name. He paused, noticing the commotion. "What's happening here?" he asked, his deep voice cutting through the awkward silence. The receptionist smiled tightly. "Nothing to concern yourself with, sir, just directing someone to the appropriate facility." But Blackwood had already seen the girl and the bundle in her arms. Something about her desperation struck him. He approached Emma, who looked up at him with exhausted, pleading eyes. "This baby needs help," she said simply. Without asking permission, Blackwood pulled back the wet blanket. The infant's face was frighteningly pale except for feverish red cheeks. His little chest struggled to rise and fall. Something inexplicable happened to James Blackwood in that moment. A strange sensation washed over him. Recognition, connection, an impossible familiarity. Without understanding why, he knew he couldn't walk away. "Get Dr. Reynolds, now," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "This child needs immediate attention." "But sir, there are protocols, and without insurance—" "I'll cover any expenses," Blackwood cut in. "And I suggest you move quickly, or I'll have to reconsider whether my family's name belongs on any part of this hospital." The effect was immediate. The baby was whisked away to an examination room, with Emma running alongside the gurney. Blackwood followed, his meeting forgotten. Dr. Karen Reynolds, the hospital's best pediatrician, examined the baby with expert hands. "Severe pneumonia and dehydration," she diagnosed grimly. "He's going to need IV antibiotics, fluids, and close monitoring. It's a good thing you brought him in when you did." Emma hovered anxiously nearby. "Will he be okay?" "We'll do everything we can," Dr. Reynolds assured her. "What's his name?" "Tommy," Emma said quietly. "His name is Tommy." As the medical team worked to stabilize the infant, Blackwood observed Emma. She was clearly malnourished, exhausted, and possibly homeless, yet her concern was entirely for the child. "Is he your brother?" Blackwood asked gently. Emma hesitated. "Yes," she lied, the word feeling safer than the complicated truth. "And your parents?" "It's just us," she said, not meeting his eyes. A nurse approached Emma. "You should change out of those wet clothes. We have some scrubs you can use. Emma shook her head. I'm not leaving him. I'll stay with him, Blackwood offered, surprising himself. You need to take care of yourself too. Something in his voice, authority tempered with unexpected kindness, made Emma reluctantly agree. Once she had gone with the nurse, Blackwood approached Tommy's bedside. The child had been connected to monitors and IVs, an oxygen mask covering most of his tiny face. Blackwood felt an overwhelming urge to comfort the baby. He reached out, gently touching Tommy's small hand with his finger. The infant reflexively grasped it, and Blackwood felt his heart constrict with an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. Dr. Reynolds returned to check Tommy's vitals. His fever's still high, but he's responding to the medication. The next few hours will be crucial. Do whatever's necessary, Blackwood said. I want him to have the best care possible. Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Reynolds said hesitantly, that girl isn't telling us everything. Hospital policy requires us to contact Child Protective Services in situations like this. Blackwood frowned. Let's focus on saving this child first. I'll take responsibility for sorting out the details afterward. When Emma returned wearing clean scrubs, her wet hair pulled back, she looked even younger than before. She rushed to Tommy's side, relief washing over her face when she saw his condition had stabilized somewhat. Thank you, she said to Blackwood, her voice barely audible. When was the last time you ate? He asked. Emma shrugged. Yesterday, maybe, I don't remember. Blackwood sent his driver to bring food, and when it arrived he watched as Emma devoured a sandwich with the desperate hunger of someone who'd gone too long without a proper meal. How long have you been taking care of Tommy? He asked carefully. A few months, she admitted between bites. Found him? He needed someone. And where did you find him exactly? Emma's expression closed. Does it matter? He needs me. Of course it matters, Blackwood said gently. A baby doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Are you going to take him away from me? Her voice trembled with fear. I'm trying to understand so I can help you both, Blackwood explained. You've clearly been doing everything you can for him, but you're just a child yourself. Emma fell silent, watching Tommy's chest rise and fall. Blackwood didn't press further. There would be time for answers later. As midnight approached, Tommy's fever finally broke. Emma, exhausted beyond measure, had fallen asleep in a chair beside his crib, her hand reaching through the bars to maintain contact with him. Blackwood stood at the window, watching the storm gradually subside. His mind was troubled by an inexplicable feeling, a connection to this child that made no logical sense. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo he kept hidden in a protected folder, one that brought him equal measures of joy and pain. A picture of his infant son, Jacob, who had disappeared 3 years ago under mysterious circumstances. He looked from the photo to Tommy, searching for similarities, trying to understand the strange pull he felt. It was then that the nurse changed Tommy's hospital gown, and Blackwood noticed something that made his heart stop. A small, crescent-shaped birthmark on the baby's right shoulder, identical to the one his missing son had. Blackwood steadied himself against the wall, his mind racing. It couldn't be possible, and yet he moved closer, studying Tommy's features with new intensity. The same nose, the same curve of the forehead. Could it really be? Outside, the storm had finally passed, leaving behind a strange, expectant silence. Blackwood looked at Emma, at the fierce, protective love with which she watched over Tommy even in sleep, and knew that regardless of who this child was, the storm that had brought them together had only just begun. Morning arrived with gentle fingers of sunlight reaching through the hospital window. James Blackwood hadn't left. He'd spent the night in an uncomfortable chair, drifting between troubled sleep and pensive wakefulness, his eyes frequently drawn to the sleeping infant. Tommy's condition had stabilized overnight. His breathing was stronger, his fever reduced to a mild elevation. Blackwood rubbed his tired eyes, the revelation of the birthmark still churning in his mind. The statistical probability of another child having that exact crescent marking in that precise location was astronomically small. Yet the logical part of his brain resisted the hope rising within him. Hope was dangerous. He'd learned that lesson all too well. Emma stirred in her chair, instantly alert as she checked on Tommy. Her devotion was palpable, unquestionable. He looks better, Blackwood observed, keeping his voice casual despite the tumult of his thoughts. His color's coming back, Emma agreed, relief evident in her voice. She hesitated, then added, I should probably go, now that he's getting better. Go where? Blackwood interrupted. Emma shrugged, avoiding his gaze. We'll figure something out, we always do. Emma, Blackwood said gently, you're clearly homeless. It's October in Boston and winter is coming. Where were you planning to take a sick infant? Her silence confirmed his suspicions. This girl had been living on the streets, somehow keeping this baby alive through sheer determination. I know a place, she finally muttered. An abandoned building where a few of us stay. It's not so bad. Dr. Reynolds entered before Blackwood could respond. She examined Tommy thoroughly, her experienced hands gentle yet precise. He's responding well to treatment, she announced. The antibiotics are working, but he'll need to stay for at least 3 more days to complete the course and ensure the infection is fully cleared. After the doctor left, Blackwood made a decision. I have a guest house on my property. You and Tommy can stay there once he's discharged, at least until we sort things out. Emma's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Why would you do that? You don't even know us. Because you need help, Blackwood replied simply. Then, after a pause, and because there's something about Tommy that reminds me of someone. Who? Emma asked sharply. Blackwood considered his words carefully. I had a son. He would be about Tommy's age now. Had. He disappeared 3 years ago. Blackwood's voice remained steady, but Emma caught the undercurrent of pain. He was taken from our home. The investigation went cold. My wife couldn't handle the uncertainty, the constant waiting. Our marriage didn't survive it. Emma's expression softened slightly, but her protective instincts remained on high alert. I'm sorry about your son, but Tommy isn't him. I never said he was, Blackwood replied, though the possibility hummed through his veins. But right now, you both need help, and I'm in a position to provide it. A nurse came in to check Tommy's vitals, interrupting their conversation. When they were alone again, Emma's stomach growled audibly, reminding them both that she hadn't eaten since the sandwich the night before. Let me get you some breakfast, Blackwood offered. Is there anything specific you'd like? Emma seemed taken aback by the question, as if no one had asked about her preferences in a very long time. Anything is fine. I'm not picky. Humor me, Blackwood insisted. If you could have anything for breakfast right now, what would it be? A small smile touched Emma's lips. Pancakes, with strawberries and whipped cream. Blackwood nodded, pulling out his phone. Consider it done. While they waited for the food, Blackwood decided to approach the subject of Tommy's origins more directly. Emma, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be honest with me. Where exactly did you find Tommy? Emma's guard went up immediately. Why does it matter? Because if he's been reported missing, there could be people looking for him. Parents who are worried sick. He wasn't wanted, Emma said firmly. That's all you need to know. That's not how this works, Blackwood countered gently. I can help you, but not if you're withholding information about a child who might have been taken from his family. Emma's eyes flashed with anger. I didn't take him. I saved him. From what? From whom? Before Emma could answer, Tommy began to stir, whimpering softly. She immediately turned her attention to him, effectively ending the conversation. Blackwood watched as she soothed the baby with quiet words and gentle touches. The bond between them was evident, but something about her defensiveness troubled him. What was she hiding? The breakfast arrived, a stack of fluffy pancakes topped with fresh strawberries and whipped cream, along with coffee for Blackwood and orange juice for Emma. Despite her earlier enthusiasm, Emma ate distractedly, her mind clearly preoccupied. There's something you should know, Blackwood said after a while. Tommy has a birthmark, a crescent-shaped mark on his right shoulder. Emma froze mid-bite. How do you know that? The nurses changed him after I fell asleep. I saw it last night, Blackwood confirmed. My son, Jacob, had the exact same birthmark in the exact same place. The color drained from Emma's face. That doesn't mean anything. Lots of babies probably have birthmarks. Not like that one. It's distinctive, unusual. Blackwood leaned forward. Emma, is there any possibility that Tommy could be my son? Emma pushed her plate away, her appetite gone. No, that's impossible. Why impossible? You said yourself you found him. When exactly was that? Where? Tommy began to cry, as if sensing the tension in the room. Emma lifted him from the crib, cradling him protectively. I've been taking care of him for almost 6 months, she finally admitted. He was with someone who didn't care about him, someone who hurt him. I couldn't leave him there. Who? Blackwood pressed. Who had him? A man named Victor Slater, Emma said, her voice barely audible. He's not a good person. The name meant nothing to Blackwood, but the fear in Emma's eyes told him everything he needed to know about this Victor Slater. "How do you know him?" he asked carefully. "He runs the group home I was placed in after my last foster family decided they didn't want me anymore." Emma's matter-of-fact tone made the statement even more heartbreaking. "It's supposed to be for teenagers transitioning to independence, but it's really just a way for him to collect government checks." "And Tommy was there? At this group home?" Emma nodded. "Victor had him in a back room. Said he was his nephew, but he never took care of him. Left him in dirty diapers, barely fed him." Her voice hardened. "One night I heard Tommy crying for hours. Victor was passed out drunk. I went in and found Tommy with bruises on his arms. That's when I decided to take him and run." "Did you ever report Victor to the authorities?" Emma gave a bitter laugh. "To who? The same people who put me in his care? The system is broken, Mr. Blackwood. People like Victor know how to work it. He would have convinced them I was lying, and then—" She shuddered. "It would have been worse for both of us." Blackwood absorbed this information, his mind working rapidly. If this Victor Slater had somehow been involved in Jacob's disappearance, but how? Why? There had been no ransom demand, no communication of any kind. "I need to make a phone call," Blackwood said, standing abruptly. "Will you be all right for a few minutes?" Emma nodded, still holding Tommy close. As Blackwood stepped into the hallway, he caught sight of Dr. Reynolds approaching with a concerned expression. "Mr. Blackwood, may I have a word?" The doctor drew him aside, lowering her voice. "During Tommy's examination, I noticed some concerning signs. There are faded bruises on his body in various stages of healing, and evidence of previous inadequate nutrition." Blackwood's jaw tightened. "You're saying he was abused?" "The evidence suggests he hasn't always received proper care," Dr. Reynolds confirmed. "I've seen cases like this before. I'm legally obligated to report this to Child Protective Services." "I understand," Blackwood said. "But there may be more to this situation than appears. That girl in there risked everything to protect him." "She's still a minor herself," Dr. Reynolds pointed out. "Regardless of her intentions, she can't legally care for an infant." "What if—" Blackwood hesitated, then made a decision. "What if Tommy is actually my missing son, Jacob?" Dr. Reynolds' eyes widened. "That's a significant claim, Mr. Blackwood. I know how it sounds, but the birthmark, the timing, I need to know for certain. Can you arrange a DNA test? Discreetly?" The doctor considered this request. "It would be simple enough to take a sample from both of you. But I should warn you, Mr. Blackwood, if you pursue this and he isn't your son, you may be setting yourself up for tremendous disappointment. And if I don't pursue it and he is," Blackwood countered, "I've lived with uncertainty for 3 years, Doctor. Even a negative result would bring some form of closure." Dr. Reynolds nodded. "I'll arrange it. But remember, the hospital is still obligated to follow protocol regarding potential abuse cases." "I understand. Thank you." As Blackwood returned to Tommy's room, he found Emma singing softly to the baby, a simple lullaby that made the sterile hospital room feel suddenly warm with humanity. Looking at them together, this brave, broken girl and the infant she'd sacrificed everything to protect, Blackwood felt a fierce resolve forming within him. Whether Tommy was Jacob or not, Blackwood knew with absolute certainty that he would do whatever it took to keep them both safe. Something profound had changed within him since last night's storm. For the first time in 3 years, James Blackwood had a purpose again, and perhaps, if the impossible proved true, a chance to reclaim the family he'd thought was lost forever. While Tommy continued his recovery, Blackwood made a series of phone calls from the privacy of his car in the hospital parking garage. The first was to his longtime attorney and friend, Richard Harmon. "I need you to investigate someone named Victor Slater," Blackwood explained, after giving Richard a condensed version of the previous night's events. "He apparently runs a group home for teenagers, somewhere in Boston. And Richard, I need you to be discreet. If this man is connected to Jacob's disappearance, I don't want to spook him." "James," Richard's voice carried a note of concern, "I understand you want to believe this baby might be Jacob, but the probability—" "I know the probability," Blackwood cut in. "But the birthmark is identical, Richard. Identical." A heavy silence filled the line before Richard responded. "I'll look into Slater, and I'll contact Alan Parker." Alan Parker had been the private investigator Blackwood hired after the police investigation into Jacob's disappearance had stalled. For 2 years, Parker had pursued every lead, no matter how tenuous. before finally advising Blackwood that continuing would only prolong his suffering. "Thank you," Blackwood said. "And one more thing. I need you to prepare temporary guardianship papers for both the baby and a teenage girl named Emma Harper. She's approximately 15, possibly a runaway from the foster care system." "James," Richard's voice carried a warning, "taking custody of a minor who's in the system, even temporarily, could be complicated. There are protocols. Then navigate them," Blackwood said firmly. "These children need protection, and I intend to provide it, whatever it takes." After ending the call, Blackwood sat motionless, memories washing over him like waves against a shore. 3 years earlier, his life had been everything he'd ever worked for. A successful technology company that had made him wealthy beyond his wildest dreams, a beautiful home in Beacon Hill, his wife Catherine, and their precious son Jacob. The night it happened had been ordinary. A dinner party with friends, the baby monitor on the table beside them, the nursery just upstairs. The nanny, Melissa, had checked on Jacob at 8:30 p.m., reporting that he was sleeping peacefully. By 10 p.m., when Catherine went to kiss him goodnight, the crib was empty. Melissa was found unconscious in the hallway, a head injury leaving her with no memory of what had happened. The investigation revealed no forced entry, suggesting someone familiar with the house had taken Jacob. The security system had been deactivated using the proper code. Every staff member, every friend, every acquaintance had been investigated. Nothing was found. No ransom demand, no sightings, no evidence. It was as if Jacob had simply vanished into thin air. The strain had destroyed his marriage. Catherine had blamed him for insisting they maintain a public profile despite his wealth, for not having better security, for being downstairs enjoying himself while their son was being taken. In truth, Blackwood blamed himself for all the same reasons. Their divorce had been finalized just over a year after Jacob's disappearance, Catherine moving to Europe to escape the memories and the pitying glances of their social circle. Blackwood had thrown himself into his work, expanding his company aggressively, as if success could somehow fill the void Jacob's absence had left. But the hole remained, a constant ache that nothing could touch, until last night when a desperate girl had appeared with a feverish baby in her arms. His phone rang, pulling him from his reverie. It was Dr. Reynolds. "Mr. Blackwood, I've arranged for the DNA samples to be collected. The lab can rush the results, but it will still take at least 48 hours. "I understand. Thank you. There's something else," Dr. Reynolds continued. "The social worker from Child Protective Services has arrived. She needs to speak with Emma, and you should be prepared. She may recommend temporary placement for both children. I'll be right there." When Blackwood returned to Tommy's room, he found a woman in a crisp pantsuit speaking with Emma, whose posture radiated defensive tension. The baby was sleeping peacefully in his crib, unaware of the battle being waged over his future. "Mr. Blackwood," the social worker greeted him, extending her hand. "I'm Diane Morris from Child Protective Services. Dr. Reynolds mentioned you've taken an interest in this situation." "Yes," Blackwood confirmed, shaking her hand. "I've already spoken with my attorney about obtaining temporary guardianship for both Emma and Tommy while we sort this out." Emma's head snapped up, surprise evident in her expression. Ms. Morris raised an eyebrow. "That's certainly proactive of you, Mr. Blackwood, but there are procedures we must follow. Emma is a minor who, by her own admission, ran away from her placement, and the baby's identity and legal status remain unclear." "I understand that," Blackwood said smoothly, "but surely you can appreciate that separating them at this point would be traumatic for both children. Emma has been Tommy's primary caregiver for months, and he's still recovering from a serious illness. While I sympathize with your concern, Ms. Morris replied, her tone professional but firm, my responsibility is to ensure both children are in appropriate, licensed care environments. My home is certainly appropriate, Blackwood countered, and I'm willing to undergo any necessary evaluations or inspections to satisfy your requirements. Ms. Morris studied him with practiced assessment. May I ask why you're so invested in this situation, Mr. Blackwood? You only met these children yesterday. Blackwood hesitated, glancing at Emma, who watched him with guarded curiosity. I believe Tommy may be my son, Jacob, who disappeared 3 years ago. Ms. Morris's expression shifted to one of gentle concern. I see. And what led you to this conclusion? A distinctive birthmark, for one. And the timing aligns. We're conducting DNA testing to confirm. I understand this must be a difficult time for you, Ms. Morris said carefully. But until those results come back, I have to proceed according to protocol. Which means what exactly? Emma interrupted, her voice tight with anxiety. For now, Tommy will remain here until he's medically cleared, Ms. Morris explained. As for you, Emma, we need to place you in an appropriate youth facility until we can determine the best long-term arrangement. You mean send me back to Victor? Emma said flatly. Ms. Morris consulted her notes. Victor Slater is listed as the director of your last placement, yes. If that's where you're officially registered, she's not going back there, Blackwood stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. The man was abusing Tommy and neglecting Emma. I'm prepared to file a formal complaint and use every resource at my disposal to ensure neither child returns to his care. Ms. Morris frowned. These are serious allegations, Mr. Blackwood, which is precisely why I'm asking you to allow both children to remain in my care while they're investigated, Blackwood pressed. I can provide a safe environment, proper medical care, and stability during this transitional period. Please, Emma added quietly, I can't go back there, and Tommy needs me. Ms. Morris sighed, clearly conflicted. I'll need to consult with my supervisor, and Mr. Blackwood, your attorney, will need to file the appropriate paperwork immediately. In the meantime, I can authorize a temporary emergency placement, but there will need to be a home inspection and background check. Of course, Blackwood agreed readily. My attorney is already preparing the paperwork. After Ms. Morris left to make her calls, Emma turned to Blackwood, her expression a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. Yes, I did, Blackwood replied simply. Why? Because you think Tommy might be your son? What if he's not? What happens to us then? Blackwood considered his answer carefully. Emma, whether Tommy is Jacob or not doesn't change the fact that you both need help. I'm in a position to provide that help. People don't just help other people for no reason, Emma said skeptically, especially not rich people. Perhaps I'm not as selfish as you think, Blackwood said with a small smile, or perhaps helping you helps me too. These past 3 years have been empty. Last night when you appeared with Tommy, it was the first time I felt truly purposeful in a very long time. Emma seemed to accept this explanation, though wariness still lingered in her eyes. So what happens now? Now, we wait for Tommy to recover enough to leave the hospital. My housekeeper is preparing the guest house for you both. It's on the grounds of my estate, so you'll have privacy but also security. And Victor, what if he comes looking for us? Let me worry about Victor Slater, Blackwood said, his voice hardening slightly. You focus on taking care of Tommy and yourself. As if on cue, Tommy awakened, his eyes clearer than they had been since his admission. He made a soft cooing sound, reaching tiny fingers toward the voices he recognized. Emma immediately went to him, lifting him gently from the crib. Hey, little guy, she murmured. Feeling better? Blackwood watched them together, the tenderness in Emma's care undeniable. Despite her youth and the hardships she'd clearly endured, she had a natural gift for nurturing. Tommy responded to her with complete trust, his little face turning toward her voice. May I? Blackwood asked, extending his arms hesitantly. Emma hesitated only briefly before carefully transferring Tommy to Blackwood's waiting embrace. The baby looked up at him with curious blue eyes, eyes that might have been Catherine's or perhaps just a coincidence of genetics. Blackwood felt a surge of protectiveness so powerful it nearly overwhelmed him. Hello, Tommy, he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. You're quite the fighter, aren't you? Tommy reached up, his small fingers closing around Blackwood's thumb with surprising strength. In that simple, instinctive gesture, Blackwood felt a connection that transcended logic and probability. Whatever the DNA test revealed, he already knew this child had claimed a piece of his heart. Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Reynolds called from the doorway, if you have a moment, we're ready to collect those samples now. The DNA test, the scientific answer to the question that had consumed Blackwood's thoughts since discovering the birthmark. Part of him feared the results, knowing that a negative outcome would reopen wounds that had never truly healed. Yet another part desperately needed the certainty, whatever it might be. Of course, he replied, carefully returning Tommy to Emma's arms. As he followed Dr. Reynolds from the room, he glanced back at the tableau they created, a young girl cradling a baby, both vulnerable yet incredibly resilient. Regardless of biology, Blackwood realized they had already become important to him in a way he hadn't thought possible after losing Jacob. And if Tommy did turn out to be his son, the possibility was almost too precious to contemplate. After years of darkness, A light had appeared in the most unexpected form, a desperate girl on a stormy night carrying a miracle in her arms. As Dr. Reynolds prepared to take the DNA sample, Blackwood closed his eyes briefly, a silent prayer forming in his mind. For the first time in 3 years, James Blackwood dared to hope. 3 days later, Tommy was deemed well enough to leave the hospital. His recovery had been remarkable. The resilience of children, Dr. Reynolds had explained, often surprised even seasoned medical professionals. Blackwood had spent most of those 3 days at the hospital, leaving only to oversee preparations at his home and attend to urgent business matters that couldn't be delegated. During that time, Ms. Morris from Child Protective Services had conducted her preliminary investigation, interviewing Emma multiple times about her experiences at Victor Slater's group home and her care of Tommy. Richard Harmon had worked his legal magic, securing temporary emergency guardianship for Blackwood, contingent upon a formal home study and continued cooperation with CPS. Now, as Blackwood drove them through the wrought iron gates of his Beacon Hill estate, he watched Emma's reaction in the rearview mirror. Her eyes widened as she took in the sprawling grounds and the imposing Georgian-style mansion that served as the main residence. "You live here alone?" she asked incredulously. "It's been just me for the past 2 years," Blackwood confirmed. "Well, and the staff? Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, Thomas, who manages the grounds, and Maria, who comes in to cook a few days a week. It's like something from a movie," Emma murmured, still staring out the window. Blackwood smiled slightly. "We're not going to the main house, actually. I thought you'd be more comfortable in the guest house. It's smaller, more manageable, and offers more privacy." He drove past the mansion and along a winding path through manicured gardens until they reached a charming Cape Cod-style cottage nestled among mature oak trees. Though modest compared to the main residence, the guest house was still larger than any home Emma had likely ever lived in. "This is all for us?" Emma asked as Blackwood parked the car. "For now," he confirmed. "I hope you'll find it suitable." Inside, the cottage had been thoroughly prepared for their arrival. The living room was comfortably furnished with plush sofas and a stone fireplace. The kitchen was fully stocked with groceries. A nursery had been hastily but expertly assembled, complete with crib, changing table, and a rocking chair. Emma's room featured a queen-sized bed with fresh linens and a bathroom stocked with new toiletries. "I wasn't sure what you might need," Blackwood explained as Emma explored the space. Tommy cradled securely in her arms. "Mrs. Winters tried to think of everything, but if there's anything missing, just let us know." Emma turned to him, her expression conflicted. "Why are you doing all this? Even if Tommy is your son, I'm nobody to you." "You saved him," Blackwood said simply. "If Tommy is Jacob, then I owe you everything. And if he's not—" He paused. "Well, you still saved a child who needed you at great personal risk. That deserves recognition and support." Before Emma could respond, Blackwood's phone rang. It was Richard Harmon. "Excuse me, I need to take this," he said, stepping onto the cottage's front porch for privacy. "James," Richard's voice was tense, "we've found some concerning information about Victor Slater. Tell me. He has a history of complaints against him, allegations of misappropriation of funds, neglect, even abuse. Somehow, he's managed to avoid serious consequences each time. He seems to have connections in places that matter." "What kind of connections?" Blackwood asked sharply. "That's where it gets interesting." Before he started running group homes, Slater worked security for several high-profile families in the Boston area. Blackwood felt his pulse quicken. "Including mine?" "No, not directly, but he did work for CompSec Enterprises for about 5 years. Blackwood's grip on the phone tightened. CompSec had provided the security system for his home, the same system that had been deactivated the night Jacob disappeared. "There's more," Richard continued. "Alan Parker did some digging into Slater's finances. For the past 3 years, he's been receiving regular payments from an offshore account. Nothing enormous, but substantial enough to suggest it's not just random income." "Starting when exactly?" "The first deposit was made 3 years and 2 months ago." Blackwood closed his eyes, processing this information. "Right around when Jacob disappeared." "Yes, it could be coincidence, but we both know it's not," Blackwood interrupted. "Richard, I need everything you can get on Slater. Every connection, every address, every person he's ever worked with or for. Already on it. Alan is being extremely careful. If Slater is involved in what happened to Jacob, we don't want to alert him that we're connecting the dots." After ending the call, Blackwood stood on the porch, staring out at the carefully maintained gardens that surrounded the guest house. The possibility that they were finally closing in on the truth about Jacob's disappearance was both exhilarating and terrifying. When he returned inside, he found Emma settling Tommy in the new crib, singing softly to him. The domesticity of the scene tugged at something deep within him, a longing for the family life that had been violently torn away 3 years ago. "Everything okay?" Emma asked, noticing his expression. "Just business," Blackwood replied, not wanting to burden her with his suspicions yet. "How's Tommy doing?" "Tired from the trip, but his fever's completely gone." Emma touched the baby's cheek gently. "He's a fighter." "Like someone else I know," Blackwood observed, causing Emma to blush slightly. The sound of tires on gravel drew their attention. Through the window, Blackwood saw Dr. Reynolds' car approaching. "That's odd," he murmured. "I wasn't expecting Dr. Reynolds today." They met her at the door, where her serious expression immediately set Blackwood on edge. "I have the DNA results," she said without preamble. "I thought you'd want to know as soon as possible." Blackwood's heart hammered in his chest. "And?" Dr. Reynolds glanced at Emma, then back to Blackwood. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No," Blackwood said firmly. "Emma deserves to hear this too, whatever it is." Dr. Reynolds nodded, reaching into her bag to withdraw an envelope. "The comparison between your DNA and Tommy's shows a 99.9% probability of paternity. Tommy is your son, Mr. Blackwood. He's Jacob." The world seemed to tilt beneath Blackwood's feet. Despite his suspicions, despite his hopes, having scientific confirmation that the baby he'd been caring for was truly his long-lost son overwhelmed him completely. He reached blindly for the nearest chair, sinking into it as the magnitude of the revelation washed over him. "Jacob," he whispered, the name both familiar and strange on his tongue after so long. "My son." Emma stood frozen, her expression unreadable. "So, what happens now?" she asked, her voice small. Dr. Reynolds turned to her with gentle understanding. "Emma, you've done something extraordinary in caring for this child. You recognized he needed help, and you protected him at great personal cost. But he's not mine," Emma said flatly. "He never was. He belongs with his father." "Yes, he does," Blackwood agreed, finally finding his voice. "But that doesn't diminish what you did for him. You saved his life, Emma. Twice. First from Victor Slater, and then by bringing him to the hospital during the storm." Emma's eyes filled with tears that she stubbornly refused to let fall. "I should pack my things. CPS will probably want to place me somewhere else now." "No," Blackwood said firmly, "that's not happening." "But, Emma, I meant what I said before. Whether Tommy Jacob was my son or not, you still need a safe place. And Jacob clearly trusts you. You're important to him." Blackwood stood, approaching her carefully. "I'd like you to stay, to help me care for him. He knows you better than he knows me right now." Hope and suspicion warred in Emma's expression. "You'd still want me around, even though you don't need me anymore?" "This isn't about what I need," Blackwood said gently. "It's about what Jacob needs. And right now, that includes you." A tiny cry from the nursery interrupted them. Emma instinctively started toward the sound, then hesitated, looking at Blackwood questioningly. "Go ahead," he encouraged her. "He's asking for you." As Emma went to comfort the baby, Jacob, Blackwood reminded himself, Dr. Reynolds approached him with a concerned expression. "There's something else you should know," she said quietly. "When I was processing the DNA samples, I ran a standard health panel as well. Jacob has a rare blood type, AB negative. It's the same type mentioned in his medical records from when he was born." "Yes, he inherited that from Catherine, his mother," Blackwood confirmed. "I thought you should know because it's medically relevant, especially if he ever needs a transfusion. Only about 1% of the population has this blood type." After Dr. Reynolds departed, Blackwood found himself drawn to the nursery, where Emma was gently rocking Jacob back to sleep. He watched from the doorway, emotions tumbling through him. Joy at having found his son, gratitude toward the girl who had saved him, and a growing resolve to uncover the full truth about what had happened 3 years ago. "He looks peaceful," Blackwood observed softly. Emma nodded. "He usually does after feeding. It's like his favorite time." "You know him so well," Blackwood said. Would you tell me about him? About what he likes, what comforts him, his routines?" Emma seemed surprised by the request, but pleased. "He loves being sung to, doesn't matter what song really, just the sound of a voice. And he has this thing where he rubs his ear when he's tired. Oh, and he hates having wet feet even in the bath. Makes him cry every time." Blackwood absorbed these details hungrily, these precious insights into the son he was just beginning to know again. "Emma," he said after a moment, "there's something I need to tell you. It's about Victor Slater." Her body tensed immediately. "What about him?" "We have reason to believe he may have been involved in Jacob's disappearance 3 years ago. He had connections to the security company that installed our system, and he began receiving mysterious payments around the time Jacob went missing." Emma's eyes widened. "You think he took your baby and then just kept him in that awful place?" "I don't know yet," Blackwood admitted, "but we're investigating. What I do know is that he might pose a danger to both of you if he discovers where you are." "He'll come looking," Emma said with certainty. "He wasn't just neglectful, Mr. Blackwood. He was calculated. He treated the group home like a business, and we were all just assets to him. When I took Tommy Jacob, I cost him something valuable. He won't let that go." "Let him try," Blackwood said, a steely edge to his voice. "This property has security measures he can't imagine, and I've hired additional protection. You're both safe here." As if to contradict his words, his phone vibrated with a text message from Richard. "Slater filed a missing persons report for Emma and a child he claims is his nephew. Police will be following up. Need to talk ASAP." Blackwood's jaw tightened. The game had begun. Victor Slater making his first move to reclaim what he considered his property. But James Blackwood had resources, influence, and now the most powerful motivation imaginable: protecting his newfound family. "Emma," he said, pocketing his phone, "I promise you this. Victor Slater will never harm either of you again. Whatever I have to do, whatever it costs, I will keep you both safe." In the crib, Jacob sighed in his sleep, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering around him, or of the lengths to which both his father and his young protector would go to shield him from its fury. The knock on the guest house door came early the next morning. Blackwood, who had been reviewing documents at the kitchen table while Emma fed Jacob breakfast, rose to answer it. 2 police officers stood on the porch, a middle-aged man with a weathered face and a younger woman whose observant eyes missed nothing. "Mr. James Blackwood?" the male officer asked. "Yes. How can I help you?" "I'm Officer Daniels, and this is Officer Rivera. We're following up on a missing persons report for a minor named Emma Harper and an infant identified as Thomas Slater. We have reason to believe they might be on your property." Blackwood maintained a calm exterior, despite his racing thoughts. "Yes, they're here. Please come in." He led the officers into the living room, where Emma had appeared, holding Jacob protectively against her shoulder. Her face had gone pale, but she stood her ground, chin raised defiantly. "Emma," Officer Rivera addressed her directly, "are you here willingly?" "Yes," Emma replied firmly. "I'm not missing. I'm safe here." Officer Daniels consulted his notes. "According to our report, you ran away from your legal placement at a group home run by Victor Slater, taking his nephew with you. Mr. Slater is quite concerned about both of you." Emma's laugh was bitter. "I bet he is. His nephew was being neglected and abused, and the group home was a nightmare. Ask any of the other kids there." Officer Rivera's expression softened slightly. "Those are serious allegations, Emma." "And they're being investigated," Blackwood interjected smoothly. "Child Protective Services is fully aware of the situation. Emma and the baby are here under an emergency temporary guardianship arrangement, approved by CPS. I have the documentation if you'd like to see it." He retrieved the papers Richard had prepared and handed them to Officer Daniels, who reviewed them carefully. "These appear to be in order," he acknowledged. "But there's still the matter of the child. Mr. Slater claims he's his sister's son left in his care." "That's a lie," Emma said forcefully. "He never had any documentation for Tommy. No birth certificate, no medical records, nothing. Moreover," Blackwood added, "we have conclusive DNA evidence proving that the baby is actually my son, Jacob, who was abducted from my home 3 years ago. Dr. Karen Reynolds from Beacon Hill Medical Center can confirm the test results." The officers exchanged surprised glances. "That's not what we were expecting to hear," Officer Rivera admitted. "I understand this is complicated," Blackwood said, "but I assure you everything is being handled through proper legal channels. My attorney, Richard Harmon, is working with the authorities regarding the investigation into my son's abduction and his subsequent discovery." Officer Daniels cleared his throat. "We'll need to verify this information, Mr. Blackwood." "Of course. Please feel free to contact Dr. Reynolds, CPS, and Mr. Harmon. They can all confirm what I've told you." After the officers departed, Promising to follow up after verifying Blackwood's claims, Emma collapsed onto the sofa, still clutching Jacob tightly. "He's coming for us," she whispered. "I told you he would." "He tried," Blackwood corrected her, "and he failed. The police will confirm our story, and his false report will only draw more scrutiny to him." Emma shook her head. "You don't understand. Victor always has a backup plan. He won't stop just because the police didn't take his side today." As if summoned by her words, Blackwood's phone rang. An unknown number, he answered cautiously. "Blackwood." The voice on the other end was smooth, controlled, with an undercurrent of menace that set Blackwood's teeth on edge. "Who is this?" "I think you know, Mr. Blackwood. The girl and the baby you're harboring belong with me. I'm simply calling to offer you a chance to resolve this situation, amicably." "Victor Slater," Blackwood said, watching Emma's face drain of color. "There's nothing to resolve. The baby you're referring to is my son who was taken from my home 3 years ago. DNA has confirmed it." A brief silence followed. When Slater spoke again, his tone had shifted to one of calculated reasonableness. "I see Emma has been filling your head with stories. I'm not surprised. She's always been imaginative. Troubled background, you understand. Tendency to lie to get attention. Strange, then, that her lies perfectly align with DNA evidence," Blackwood replied coldly. "DNA can be complicated, Mr. Blackwood, open to interpretation, and documents can be created when someone has the right resources, someone like yourself." The implicit accusation was clear. Blackwood had fabricated the evidence to claim a child that wasn't his. "What exactly do you want, Slater?" "Just what's rightfully mine. The boy has been in my care since he was an infant. Perhaps he is your son, perhaps not. Either way, I've developed quite an attachment. I'm willing to discuss compensation for my emotional distress if you insist on keeping him." The naked extortion attempt confirmed everything Emma had said about Victor Slater. He wasn't concerned about Jacob's welfare. He saw the child as a commodity, a leverage point. "I don't negotiate with people who take children," Blackwood said, his voice like ice. "Stay away from my family, Slater. Whatever you think you know, whatever advantage you believe you have, you're wrong." Slater's chuckle sent a chill down Blackwood's spine. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Blackwood. I know things about your son's disappearance that would interest you greatly, things worth paying for. Then I suggest you share that information with the FBI. They've reopened the investigation into my son's abduction. I'm sure they'd be very interested in what you know." "The FBI," Slater repeated, a new edge in his voice. "That seems excessive for what could be resolved between gentlemen." "There's nothing gentlemanly about child abduction," Blackwood countered. "Goodbye, Mr. Slater." He ended the call, turning to find Emma watching him with wide, frightened eyes. "He threatened you, didn't he?" she asked. "He tried to," Blackwood confirmed. "But threats only work when they inspire fear, and I'm not afraid of Victor Slater." "You should be," Emma said quietly. "He knows people. Dangerous people." Blackwood knelt before her, meeting her gaze directly. "Emma, I understand you're scared. You've had to survive by being cautious, by anticipating the worst, but you're not alone anymore. I have resources too, legitimate ones. Security systems, legal teams, connections with law enforcement. Victor Slater is used to intimidating vulnerable people who can't fight back. That's not us." Emma didn't appear entirely convinced, but she nodded, adjusting Jacob in her arms as he began to fuss. "I should put him down for his nap," she said, rising. "I'll do it," Blackwood offered. "If you don't mind." After a moment's hesitation, Emma carefully transferred Jacob to his father's arms. The baby looked up at Blackwood with curious eyes, reaching a tiny hand toward his face. "Hello, Jacob," Blackwood said softly. "Time for some rest, little one?" As he carried his son to the nursery, a fierce protectiveness surged within him. He would move heaven and earth to keep this child safe, and Emma too, who had risked everything to protect Jacob when no one else would. In the nursery, Blackwood gently laid Jacob in his crib, watching as the baby's eyelids grew heavy. He began to hum softly, a lullaby he remembered from his own childhood. Jacob's eyes closed, his breathing becoming deep and regular. Blackwood stood there long after Jacob had fallen asleep, simply watching his son. This miracle he'd thought forever lost to him. The pain of the past 3 years, the collapse of his marriage, the emptiness that had consumed him, all of it seemed to recede in the face of this simple, profound moment. His contemplation was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass from the main room of the cottage. "Emma," he called, hurrying from the nursery. The sight that greeted him froze him in place. Two men in dark clothing stood in the living room, one restraining a struggling Emma, while the other advanced toward Blackwood. Through the broken window, he could see a black SUV with tinted windows idling in the driveway. "Mr. Blackwood," the approaching man said, his voice eerily calm. "Mr. Slater sends his regards. He suggested we might continue your conversation in person." Blackwood assessed the situation rapidly. The security system should have alerted his team to the breach. Help would be coming, but he needed to stall. "Breaking and entering, assault, attempted kidnapping," Blackwood said coolly. "So your employer certainly doesn't waste time escalating the situation." "This isn't a kidnapping," the man replied with a humorless smile. "It's a family reunion. Mr. Slater is simply reclaiming his nephew and the troubled runaway in his care." "Let her go," Blackwood demanded, his eyes fixed on Emma, who continued to struggle against her captor's grip. "The police have already been here today. They know Emma and Jacob are under my protection." "Jacob?" The man's eyebrow rose. "Interesting name choice for Tommy. Very biblical. Now, why don't you get the baby, and we can all take a little drive to see Mr. Slater?" "I'm not going anywhere with you," Emma spat, attempting to wrench free. "And neither is Jacob." The man holding her tightened his grip, causing her to wince in pain. Something inside Blackwood snapped at the sight. Without conscious thought, he lunged forward, driving his shoulder into the midsection of the man advancing toward him. Years of college football returned in an instant as Blackwood tackled the intruder to the ground with surprising force. The second man released Emma to help his partner, giving her the opportunity to dash toward the kitchen. Blackwood struggled against the two men, managing to land a solid punch before taking a hit to the jaw that sent him reeling. "Get the baby!" one of the men shouted to the other. "I'll handle him." As the second intruder headed toward the nursery, Emma reappeared from the kitchen wielding a fire extinguisher. With a primal scream, she swung it at the man's head, connecting with enough force to send him staggering sideways into the wall. The wail of approaching sirens cut through the chaos. The first man, still grappling with Blackwood, cursed viciously. "This isn't over," he growled, releasing Blackwood and backing toward the broken window. "Slater will get what's his." Both men fled, sprinting toward their waiting vehicle. By the time the security team and police converged on the guest house, the black SUV was disappearing through the estate's gates. "Are you hurt?" Blackwood asked Emma, who stood frozen, still clutching the fire extinguisher. She shook her head mutely, though her hands were trembling. "Jacob," she whispered. "Check on Jacob." They rushed to the nursery together, finding Jacob still sleeping peacefully, undisturbed by the violence that had nearly reached his door. The sight of him, innocent and unaware, hit them both with the full gravity of what had just happened and what had nearly happened. "We need to move," Blackwood said decisively. "This location is compromised. I have a lake house in Vermont that very few people know about. We'll go there until this is resolved." As they gave their statements to the police and Blackwood made arrangements for their immediate departure, Emma remained unusually quiet, her expression distant. "What are you thinking?" Blackwood asked her as they packed essential supplies. "That I was right about Victor," she said softly, "and that I was wrong about you." "Wrong how?" "I thought you'd give up, send me away, decide we were too much trouble." She folded a small outfit of Jacob's with careful precision. "Most people do, when things get hard." "I'm not most people," Blackwood replied. "And neither are you, Emma. What you did today, standing up to those men, protecting Jacob, that was extraordinary bravery." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I just kept thinking, not this time. He's taken too much already. He doesn't get to take Jacob too." As they loaded their bags into Blackwood's car, Emma cradling Jacob securely in her arms, Blackwood made a silent vow. Victor Slater had made a critical error today. He had revealed himself as a desperate, dangerous man, willing to use violence to get what he wanted. But in doing so, he had also shown his hand too early, before he was truly prepared, and James Blackwood intended to use that mistake to ensure that Victor Slater never threatened his family again. The journey to Vermont took just over 4 hours, the landscape gradually transforming from urban sprawl to rolling countryside, and finally to the dense pine forests surrounding Lake Champlain. Jacob slept for most of the trip, while Emma kept vigilant watch, her eyes frequently checking the rearview mirror for any signs of pursuit. Blackwood's lake house was not what Emma had expected. Rather than the ostentatious mansion she had imagined, it was a spacious but modest cedar cabin, nestled among tall pines, with a broad deck overlooking the tranquil waters of the lake. The property was isolated, accessible only by a private road with a state-of-the-art security gate. "It's beautiful," Emma said softly as they pulled into the gravel driveway. "My grandfather built it," Blackwood explained, killing the engine. "When I was a child, we spent every summer here. It's one of the few places I've always felt completely at peace." The cabin's interior was warm and inviting, polished hardwood floors, comfortable furniture and large windows that filled the space with natural light. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, and a well-equipped kitchen opened onto a dining area with views of the lake. "The master bedroom is down that hallway," Blackwood said, carrying their bags inside. "There are 2 guest rooms as well. You and Jacob can take whichever you prefer." Emma chose the smaller guest room with an adjoining bathroom, which had enough space for Jacob's portable crib. As she settled the baby, who had awakened hungry and demanding, Blackwood prepared a simple dinner from supplies they had brought with them. "I've asked Richard to send someone to fully stock the kitchen tomorrow," he explained as they ate. "And he's arranged for a security team to maintain a perimeter around the property. They'll be discreet, you won't even notice them, but they'll ensure no one approaches without our knowledge." Emma nodded, pushing her food around her plate distractedly. "How long will we stay here?" "Until it's safe to return," Blackwood replied. "Which means until Victor Slater is no longer a threat." "And how does that happen exactly?" Emma's voice carried a hint of skepticism. "He doesn't seem like the type to just give up." Blackwood considered his response carefully. "Richard and Alan Parker, the private investigator I mentioned, are gathering evidence against Slater, not just regarding Jacob's abduction, but all his activities. The attack at the guest house was a serious mistake on his part. It gives us leverage with law enforcement." "You really think the police can stop him?" Emma asked. "He's been getting away with everything. For years." "The police, the FBI, and the district attorney's office," Blackwood clarified. "Richard has connections in all 3. And Slater's mistake wasn't just attacking us. It was attacking someone with the resources to fight back effectively." Emma fell silent, absently rubbing her arm where bruises were forming from the intruder's rough handling. Blackwood noticed the gesture and frowned. "We should put some ice on that," he said gently. "It's fine," Emma dismissed. "I've had worse." The casual way she said it, as if physical pain was simply an expected part of life, caused a surge of protective anger in Blackwood. This young girl had endured so much, yet remained so resilient. It reminded him of his own difficult childhood before his grandfather had taken him in, years he rarely discussed with anyone. "Emma," he said after a moment, "I want you to know that whatever happens with Slater, whatever we discover about Jacob's abduction, you have a place with us. If you want it." She looked up, surprised. "Even after everything's resolved, after you don't need me anymore?" "Jacob will always need you," Blackwood said. "You're the one constant in his life right now. And frankly, I could use your help. I've missed 3 years of his life. I don't know his habits, his preferences, the little things that comfort him. But legally, I intend to apply for permanent guardianship, regardless of the outcome with Slater," Blackwood stated firmly. "Unless, of course, you'd prefer a different arrangement." Emma blinked rapidly, emotions warring on her face. "Why would you do that?" "I'm just some foster kid who saved my son's life," Blackwood interrupted, "who risked everything to protect him, who showed more courage and compassion than most adults I know." He smiled slightly. "Besides, Jacob clearly adores you. He lights up when you enter the room. That's not something I'm willing to take away from him, or from you." Emma ducked her head, hiding the tears that had begun to well in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, the October sunlight sparkling on the lake's surface. Emma awoke to find Jacob already changed and fed, contentedly playing on a blanket in the living room, while Blackwood worked on his laptop nearby, occasionally making faces at the baby that elicited delighted giggles. "You got up with him?" Emma asked, surprised. Blackwood looked up with a smile. "He was awake when I checked on you both around 6. You were sleeping so soundly I didn't want to disturb you." "You should have woken me," Emma protested, though she couldn't deny the luxury of having slept uninterrupted for the first time in months. "You needed the rest," Blackwood said simply. "Besides, Jacob and I had some catching up to do, didn't we, buddy?" Jacob responded with a happy gurgle, reaching for the colorful toy Blackwood dangled above him. The day passed in a peaceful rhythm that felt almost surreal after the tensions of the previous days. Blackwood received regular updates from Richard about the investigation, but shared only the essential details with Emma, not wanting to burden her with every development. By late afternoon, however, a significant breakthrough came. "They've identified the men who broke into the guest house," Blackwood told Emma as they sat on the deck, watching Jacob nap in the portable bassinet beside them. "Former military, now working as private security contractors. They've been linked to at least 3 other incidents involving intimidation and coercion." "Are they going to be arrested?" Emma asked. "They already have been," Blackwood confirmed. "And they're talking, trying to make deals. They've confirmed that Slater hired them." Emma's hands clenched in her lap. "Will that be enough to stop him?" "It's a start," Blackwood said. "But there's more. Alan Parker has uncovered financial records connecting Slater to payments made around the time of Jacob's abduction. He's building a case that Slater was either directly involved or knows who was." "He had to be involved," Emma said with certainty. "The way he treated Tommy, Jacob, it was different from the other kids, more controlling, like he was afraid of losing something valuable." "Did he ever mention where Jacob came from? Any details at all?" Emma shook her head. "Just that he was his sister's kid. But none of us ever met this sister, and there were never any visits or calls." She hesitated. "There was one thing, though. He kept a box in his office, locked. I saw it once when I was cleaning in there. He caught me looking at it and got really angry, scarier than usual." "Did you ever see what was inside?" "No, but..." Emma bit her lip. "After I decided to take Jacob and run, I looked for anything that might help us, money, ID, whatever. The box was still there, but I couldn't open it. I did notice something, though. That had a logo on it, a blue shield with 3 stars. Blackwood sat up straighter. "CompSec," he said, his voice tight. "That's the logo of the security company that installed our system." "The one Slater used to work for?" Emma asked, recalling their earlier conversation. "Yes. This confirms it. He was connected to Jacob's abduction, probably from the beginning." Blackwood pulled out his phone, quickly relaying this new information to Richard. After the call, they sat in contemplative silence, watching the sunlight dance across the lake's surface. Jacob stirred in his bassinet, making the small sounds that signaled he was waking from his nap. Emma reached for him automatically, then paused, glancing at Blackwood. "Would you like to get him?" she offered. The simple gesture, Emma willingly sharing the caregiving role she had held exclusively for months, touched Blackwood deeply. He lifted Jacob carefully, cradling him against his chest as the baby blinked sleepily up at him. "Hello there," he murmured. "Did you have a good rest?" Jacob responded by grabbing a fistful of Blackwood's shirt, a gesture of trust that made his throat tight with emotion. The peaceful moment was interrupted by Blackwood's phone ringing again. It was Alan Parker, the private investigator. "James," Parker's voice was urgent, "we've got a situation. Slater's gone." "Gone where?" Blackwood demanded, instinctively holding Jacob closer. "Unknown. He cleared out his apartment this morning, withdrew a significant amount of cash, and disappeared. Local police went to the group home to question him about the break-in, and found it in chaos. Kids unsupervised, staff claiming they hadn't been paid in weeks." "He's running," Blackwood concluded grimly. "It appears so," Parker agreed. "But there's something else. Before he vanished, he accessed a storage unit in Somerville. We got a warrant to search it based on the financial evidence. James, we found documents, photos, records of Jacob's care since the abduction." Blackwood's blood ran cold. "He kept records, meticulous ones, medical notes, growth charts, even some photographs. And something else, correspondence with someone identified only as E. Email printouts discussing payments, arrangements for the child's care, even..." Parker hesitated. "Even discussions about possibly returning Jacob to you for a substantial ransom." "Who is E?" Blackwood asked, his mind racing. "We don't know yet. The emails were sent through anonymous servers, virtually untraceable. But whoever it is, they appear to have been the mastermind behind Jacob's abduction. Slater was working for them, a middleman, not the primary orchestrator." The revelation sent Blackwood's mind spinning with possibilities. Who would have targeted his family so specifically? Who stood to gain from taking Jacob? "I'm sending 2 of my most trusted operatives to augment your security team," Parker continued. "Until we locate Slater and identify his accomplice, we have to assume both you and Jacob remain targets." After ending the call, Blackwood relayed the essential information to Emma, whose face paled at the news of Slater's disappearance. "He won't stop looking for us," she said, her voice hollow. "He can't afford to, not with the police involved now. We're safe here," Blackwood assured her, though his own concern had deepened. The security team is being reinforced, and no one knows about this property except my most trusted associates. That evening, as darkness fell over the lake, Blackwood found himself unable to settle. While Emma put Jacob to bed, he paced the living room, his mind working through everything they had learned. The involvement of a mysterious benefactor changed the equation significantly. It suggested that Jacob's abduction hadn't been opportunistic, but targeted, perhaps even personal. When Emma joined him, he was standing at the window, staring out at the moonlight reflecting off the lake's still surface. "Jacob's asleep," she reported. "He went down easily tonight." "Thank you," Blackwood said, turning from the window. "Emma, there's something I need to ask you, and I need your complete honesty." Her expression grew guarded. "Okay. In all your time at Slater's group home, did you ever see or hear anything about visitors? Anyone who seemed particularly interested in Jacob? Anyone who might be this mysterious E person?" Emma considered the question carefully. There weren't many visitors. Occasionally someone from social services would come by for inspections, but Slater always knew in advance and cleaned everything up. She frowned, concentrating. "There was one person, though. A woman. She came maybe 3 or 4 times while I was there. She never entered the main part of the house. Slater would take her directly to his office and they'd stay in there for hours." "Can you describe her?" Blackwood asked, suddenly alert. "Not really. She always wore dark sunglasses and a scarf over her hair. Expensive clothes, though, designer. And perfume, really distinctive. I remember because it was the same one my 3rd foster mother wore." "Chanel something. Chanel number 5, Blackwood suggested, a chill running through him. Emma nodded. "Yeah, that sounds right. How did you know?" Blackwood didn't answer immediately, his mind reeling with the implication. Catherine, his ex-wife, had worn Chanel number 5 exclusively for as long as he had known her. It had been her signature scent. Could it be possible? Could Catherine have been involved in their son's abduction? The thought was almost too painful, too unthinkable to consider. Yet the coincidence was striking. "Mr. Blackwood?" Emma prompted, concerned by his prolonged silence. "Are you okay?" "Yes," he said, forcing himself back to the present. "Just processing. This woman, did you ever hear her name or see her face clearly?" "No." "But," Emma hesitated, "one time she left something behind, a handkerchief. It had initials embroidered on it. E.M., Eleanor Mitchell, Catherine's full name, which she had reverted to after their divorce." The room seemed to tilt around Blackwood as the pieces fell horrifyingly into place. "Emma," he said carefully, "I need to make some calls. Why don't you get some rest? I'll tell you everything in the morning." After Emma had gone to bed, Blackwood called Richard, sharing his suspicions in a voice tight with controlled emotion. "It's circumstantial," Richard cautioned. "Perfume and initials aren't proof." "I know," Blackwood acknowledged, "but it fits. Catherine was devastated when Jacob disappeared. More than devastated. She became obsessive, paranoid. When the investigation stalled, she blamed me, said it was my fault for making us public figures, for putting Jacob at risk. That doesn't mean she orchestrated his abduction," Richard pointed out. "No, but it establishes motive. What if she decided I didn't deserve to be Jacob's father? What if she arranged to have him taken, planning to eventually find him herself and gain full custody? If that was her plan, why wait 3 years?" Richard asked reasonably. "I don't know," Blackwood admitted. "Maybe something went wrong. Maybe Slater wasn't supposed to keep Jacob for so long." "It's a theory," Richard conceded. "I'll have Alan look into Catherine's movements, financial records, anything that might connect her to Slater. But James, be prepared for this to lead nowhere. And be careful about sharing these suspicions with Emma. She's been through enough trauma without being drawn into speculation." Blackwood agreed, though the suspicion had taken root in his mind, impossible to dislodge. The thought that Catherine, the woman he had once loved, the mother of his child, could have been capable of such a devastating betrayal was almost unbearable. Yet as he looked in on Jacob, sleeping peacefully in his crib with Emma dozing in the chair beside him, Blackwood felt a strange sense of clarity cutting through the turmoil of his thoughts. Whatever the truth about the past, whoever had taken Jacob and why, the present reality was undeniable. His son was here, safe, and Blackwood would do whatever was necessary to ensure he remained so. With that resolve firmly in mind, he settled into the second chair in Jacob's room, prepared to stand guard through the night. The mystery of E could wait until morning. For now, his only priority was protecting the newfound family that had been returned to him through a storm of both nature and circumstance. 5 years later, the September sun cast golden light across the expansive lawn of the Blackwood Foundation's main campus just outside Boston. Children's laughter rang through the air as dozens of young people played on the specially designed playground, their joy a testament to the healing that could occur even after the most difficult beginnings. James Blackwood stood on the porch of the administration building, watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. What had begun as a personal mission to help children like Emma had grown into something far more significant, a network of specialized care facilities, educational programs, and family support services that had transformed the lives of hundreds of vulnerable children across New England. "The senator just arrived," Richard Harmon informed him, appearing at his side. "And the news crews are setting up near the butterfly garden as requested." "Thank you, Richard," Blackwood replied. "Is Emma ready?" Finishing up her speech in the conference room, "She seems more nervous about this than her college applications." Blackwood smiled. Those were different. This is personal for her. Today marked the 5th anniversary of the Blackwood Foundation's establishment, coinciding almost exactly with the night a desperate 15-year-old girl had appeared at Beacon Hill Medical Center with a sick baby in her arms. The foundation was hosting a celebration to commemorate the milestone and announce the opening of 3 new facilities in neighboring states. As guests began to arrive, donors, community partners, government officials, Blackwood made his way to the conference room, where he found Emma standing before a mirror, adjusting the collar of her blazer with nervous fingers. "You look perfect," he assured her, entering the room. "How's the speech coming along?" "I've rewritten it 6 times, Emma admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "But I think it's finally right." At 20, Emma Harper Blackwood had blossomed into a poised young woman, her once guarded eyes now bright with purpose and confidence. She had graduated high school with honors and was now pursuing a degree in social work at Boston University, all while helping to develop the Foundation's programs for teenagers aging out of foster care. The legal adoption had been finalized 3 years earlier, on Emma's 17th birthday, a day she described as the first time she had truly felt like she belonged somewhere. Though she maintained her birth surname as a connection to her past, she had embraced the Blackwood name as a symbol of her future. "Dad," a small voice called from the doorway, followed by the rapid patter of running feet. Jacob, now 5 years old, bounded into the room with characteristic energy, his dark hair falling across bright blue eyes that were the mirror image of his father's. "Whoa there, buddy," Blackwood laughed, catching his son in mid-leap. "What's the hurry?" "Ms. Collins says I can show everyone my butterfly project during the tour," Jacob announced proudly, "and I made a new friend. His name is Mateo, and he just came to the Sunshine House yesterday. And he was scared, but I showed him my dinosaurs, and now he's not scared anymore." "That was very kind of you," Blackwood said, his heart swelling with pride at his son's natural empathy. "Being new is always a little frightening. I told him not to worry because everyone here is nice, and they help you when you're sad or scared," Jacob continued, his expression earnest. "Just like Emma helped me when I was a baby, right?" "That's right," Emma confirmed, ruffling his hair affectionately. "And now you're helping others. That's how it works." A soft knock at the door announced the arrival of Sarah Peterson, the Foundation's program director. "Sorry to interrupt, but the ceremony is about to begin. We should take our places." The main event was being held in the central courtyard, where rows of chairs had been arranged facing a small stage. Blackwood took his seat in the front row, Jacob fidgeting excitedly beside him, as the Foundation's board members delivered their opening remarks. When it was Emma's turn to speak, she approached the podium with the quiet confidence that had become her hallmark. Her gaze swept across the assembled crowd, donors in expensive attire, community partners, staff members, and most importantly, the children and families who had been helped by the Foundation's work. 5 years ago," she began, her clear voice carrying across the courtyard, "I was a different person. I was homeless, hopeless, and convinced that the world had no place for me. Then, on a stormy October night, I found myself standing in a hospital emergency room, holding a sick baby I had no legal right to, begging for help that I had no way to pay for." She paused, her eyes finding Blackwood's in the audience. What happened next changed everything, not just for that baby and for me, but eventually for hundreds of children across New England. One person chose to see beyond appearances, beyond rules and procedures, to recognize a genuine need and respond with genuine compassion. As Emma continued her speech, detailing the Foundation's accomplishments and future plans, Blackwood reflected on the extraordinary journey that had led them here. The investigation into Jacob's abduction had eventually revealed the full truth, a truth more complicated and painful than he had imagined. Catherine had indeed been the mysterious E, orchestrating Jacob's removal from Blackwood's home through Victor Slater, whom she had met through CompSec's corporate events. Her initial plan, as Blackwood had suspected, had been to arrange Jacob's discovery after a suitable period, positioning herself as the hero who had recovered their missing son and securing full custody in the process. What she hadn't anticipated was Slater's greed and untrustworthiness. After receiving his payment, Slater had essentially held Jacob hostage, demanding additional funds for his continued silence and care of the child. The situation had escalated into a years-long stalemate, with Catherine trapped by her own scheme, unable to contact authorities without exposing her role in the abduction. When confronted with the evidence, Catherine had fled to Switzerland, where she remained beyond the reach of U.S. extradition for the specific charges that could be proven. The revelation had been devastating, yet strangely liberating for Blackwood, finally understanding the full truth after years of agonizing uncertainty. Victor Slater had not been so fortunate. Apprehended attempting to cross into Canada with false identification, he now faced multiple federal charges related to kidnapping, extortion, and child endangerment. His trial was scheduled for the coming month, with both Blackwood and Emma prepared to testify. The Blackwood Foundation was born from a single act of kindness, Emma was saying, bringing Blackwood's attention back to the present. But it continues because of the thousands of acts of kindness that occur here every day, from our dedicated staff, our generous supporters, and perhaps most importantly, from the children themselves, who show us daily what resilience truly means. She gestured toward the residential buildings visible beyond the courtyard. Each of our facilities is designed to be more than just a safe place to stay. They are homes in the truest sense, places where children can heal, learn, grow, and discover their own strength, where they can find not just shelter, but belonging. Jacob squirmed in his seat, clearly impatient for his sister to finish so he could show off his butterfly project. Blackwood placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder, marveling at how completely Jacob had recovered from his traumatic early years. Children were remarkably resilient, given the right support, a fact that had become the cornerstone of the Foundation's philosophy. As we celebrate 5 years of the Blackwood Foundation, Emma continued, we also celebrate something more personal. 5 years since a storm brought 3 strangers together and began the process of making them a family. That family has grown to include everyone you see here today, and many more beyond these grounds. Her voice softened with emotion. They say that family is where life begins and love never ends. At the Blackwood Foundation, we believe that family isn't just defined by blood or by law, but by the people who stand by you when you need them most, the ones who see your value when you can't see it yourself. As applause filled the courtyard, Blackwood felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. The pain of the past, Jacob's abduction, Catherine's betrayal, the years of emptiness, had somehow transformed into this moment of purpose and connection. The storm had cleared to reveal not just the family he had lost, but an expanded vision of what family could be. After the ceremony concluded and the official tours began, Blackwood found a quiet moment with Emma near the butterfly garden that Jacob had helped plant the previous spring. Your speech was perfect, he told her. You have a gift for expressing what matters most. Emma smiled, watching as Jacob enthusiastically explained his butterfly project to a group of visitors nearby. I learned from the best. You showed me what it means to turn pain into purpose. We showed each other, Blackwood corrected gently. 5 years ago, I was just going through the motions of living. You and Jacob gave me back my heart. And you gave us a home, Emma replied. Not just a place to stay, but a real home. I never thought I'd have that. Speaking of home, Blackwood said, I almost forgot to tell you, the contractor called this morning. Your apartment above the new youth center will be ready by the time fall semester ends. Though I still don't understand why you won't just stay at the house. It's going to be awfully quiet with you gone. I'll only be 20 minutes away, Emma reminded him with an affectionate eye roll, and Jacob will keep you plenty busy. Besides, I need to start adulting for real at some point. I suppose, Blackwood conceded reluctantly. Just promise you'll still come for Sunday dinners." "As if Jacob would let me miss them," Emma laughed. "He's already planning the menu for the next 3 months." Their conversation was interrupted by Jacob himself, racing toward them with boundless energy. "Emma! Dad! Come quick! Ms. Collins says we can release the butterflies we raised. You have to see." Hand in hand, the three of them followed Jacob's lead to where a group of children gathered around several mesh containers housing magnificent monarch butterflies. Under the guidance of their teacher, each child would have the opportunity to release one of the creatures they had helped raise from caterpillars. As Jacob carefully opened his container, a brilliant orange and black monarch emerged, pausing briefly on his outstretched finger before taking flight, soaring upward on the autumn breeze. The wonder on his face mirrored the expressions of the other children, a moment of pure joy and innocent amazement. Standing there in the dappled September sunlight, surrounded by the fruits of their shared vision, James Blackwood felt the last pieces of his heart finally heal. The path that had led them here had been marked by storms both literal and figurative, by loss and struggle and pain. Yet it had also been illuminated by courage, by kindness, by the unwavering determination of a young girl who had refused to abandon a child in need. That night, after the celebrations had concluded and the guests had departed, Blackwood sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. Emma joined him, passing him a cup of coffee before settling into the adjacent chair. "I was thinking," she said after a comfortable silence, "about that night at the hospital, how close I came to giving up before you arrived." "But you didn't give up," Blackwood reminded her. "That's what matters. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been there, if someone else had walked through those doors instead." "I don't believe that was coincidence," Blackwood said softly. "Some things are meant to be, even if the path to them is difficult to understand while we're walking it." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "The Foundation has helped so many children find families, biological when possible, adoptive when necessary. But what we really give them is what you gave me that night." "And what's that?" "The chance to be seen," Emma said simply. "Really seen, for who they are and who they could become. Not just as problems to be solved or cases to be managed." From inside the house came the sound of Jacob's laughter as he played with his favorite caretaker, who had stayed late to allow Blackwood and Emma this moment of reflection. "He's going to change the world someday," Emma said, smiling at the sound. "He already has, in a way. Through the Foundation, through you. Through us," Blackwood corrected. "This is your legacy too, Emma. Never forget that." As darkness settled over the Foundation grounds, lights illuminated the pathways between buildings that housed children who, for the first time in their lives, were experiencing safety, stability, and genuine care. Children who, like Emma once had, were learning that their past circumstances did not define their future possibilities. The storm that had brought them together 5 years ago had long since passed, but its effects continued to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond their immediate circle. From one desperate plea on a rainy night, "Please help this baby," had grown a mission that transcended personal healing to become a beacon of hope for an entire community. And at the center of it all remained the bond between 3 people: a man who had regained his purpose, a young woman who had found her voice, and a child who connected them in ways that defied conventional definition of family but embodied its deepest truth: that love, once given freely, could expand beyond all imagined boundaries to create something beautiful from even the darkest beginnings. In the quiet of the autumn evening, with stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, James Blackwood looked at the young woman beside him, no longer the desperate girl from that stormy night, but a powerful force for change in her own right, and felt the full circle of their journey together. "Thank you," he said simply. Emma didn't need to ask what for. She just smiled and replied, "Thank you for hearing me when no one else would." From inside, Jacob called for them both, eager to share one last discovery before bedtime. Together they rose to answer, stepping back into the warmth of the home they had built, not just the physical structure, but the enduring connection that had transformed 3 lost souls into something miraculous. A family bound not by circumstance, but by choice. A family that had not only healed itself but had extended that healing to countless others,